Hey there, Red Devil Nation. Welcome back to another Alumni Spotlight. Today we are honored to have 2010 Dickinson running alum Nick Karwoski with us. Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks so much, Justin.
So before we get into your journey to Dickinson, tell us about where you grew up and how you got into the sport of running.
Sure. So I grew up in Hollis, New Hampshire, which is kind of right on the border of New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Um, I did everything from wrestling to basketball to, just all the soccer for sure. And after not making the soccer team to not really growing until late in high school, to realizing that wrestling probably wasn't for me. Eventually landed on cross country. I had some success in middle school and in high school, and then realized that I wanted to run in college, and I really wanted to focus on a program that had an international component to it, focused on business, whatever that meant, to a high schooler, and be able to study abroad and play a competitive sport. So the student athlete component was huge, and my dad had grown up in Pennsylvania, and so we started looking at Centennial Conference and a lot of schools in there, and settled on Dickinson. And just really liked Coach Nichter and my visit with him. At the time, he was only the cross country coach, and I had only ever done cross country. I had never really done track and field. I'd always been a rower in high school in the spring. So that endurance sport was definitely something early on that I felt like was my advantage. And then, I applied to 11 schools, all regular decision. Got into 7 of them, got rejected from 3 and waitlisted at 1. And I ultimately said to my parents, you guys pick. I kind of, and then ultimately they loved the limestone at Dickinson. They loved Carlisle, and had kind of my, small student body, but was relatively big compared to my high school, which was a graduating class of 360 kids. So going to a school that had an undergrad of 2,400 was massive to me.
Yeah.
And then I went there and showed up in Carlisle in the fall of 2006, and took a little break in 2009. But yeah, it was always kind of grew up in a competitive family, have 1 younger brother, 2 older sisters. Everyone was kind of athletic. And that was kind of the story of New Hampshire kid going to Dickinson.
What attracted you to Coach Nichter and the program here and to the school?
I think looking at a lot of the success that they had at the time, the cross country team and the track and field team always came in second. It was always like second was the best they'd ever done to Haverford. And I kind of liked that I had gone to a high school in Groton School in Massachusetts that had never won. It was always second. And then finally my senior year, we won. And so I think there was this something about looking at the team. The cross country team was a really fun group of guys. I got to stay with this one kid named Andrew Gentile for my overnight, who was a year above me, introduced me to Hot Pockets, and just had a really, at the Devil's Den downstairs in the hub, and just had a really good experience with my overnight, with the guys on the team, how they all ate together at the calf. Nichter was very knowledgeable about not only running, but physiology, training, had been doing it for 30, I think now 38 years or 37 years or something like that. And this was his life. These were his kids. Wasn't married, no kids. And I was just like, this guy is committed. This guy is very focused, and probably believed in my career as a runner more than I did. And so everything, it just kind of checked all the boxes that I was looking for, and was excited to kind of to join that Red Devil spirit.
Yeah, and you mentioned something pretty interesting that they were on the cusp of catching the Haverfords of the world, and then your class came in, and you guys were really part of that next step. We talked with actually your teammate Greg Leake about a week ago as well, and he touched on it. So just talk about the building towards that ultimate accomplishment of chasing down Haverford, winning the conference, getting to the NCAA regionals.
Yeah, I think anytime you enter a new environment, especially as a freshman in college, you tend to be more interested or more dedicated to it when the people around you kind of share that passion. And it was, these guys that were Nate Yanchef, Andy Greger, Ben Corey, Greg Lee, Kent Pecora, Mike Tarkov, Brian Crusell. The last couple guys were all the year below us, but we just had a really close group of cross-country kids. And everyone was kind of, testing the waters, feeling it out, but we worked hard. And I looked up to this kid named Andy Greger. Andy Greger came from outside of Pittsburgh, really, really solid distance runner. Had these times that I was just like, oh man, this kid is fast. And I wanted to be just like him. And he was showing up, he was putting the work in, started with, I was running in high school, maybe 50, 60 miles a week at most. And we started doing 70, 80, 90, 100-mile weeks at Dickinson. And that, it was hard. It was, you're constantly balancing school work and social life and team. And that's incredibly important in any college environment. But when you have teammates and you have people who are it's cool to do what you're doing. It's cool to do. It's fun to do what you're investing a lot of your time in and getting better at it. When you have a group of people, a group of teammates who are right there with you, I think that is ultimately what allowed us to kind of steadily increase year after year. And finally, junior year, win cross country in the fall for the first time ever, and then do it again senior year, and then indoor track, then outdoor track, and win the Triple Crown. So, and to be able to do that with a team of people who kind of always been second place, going to nationals for the first time sophomore year in 2000 and what is that, 8, 7? I always mix up the years, but yeah, just having a group of people to share that passion and to get better and to push each other. But at the end of the day, not only are you teammates, but you're friends, and still some of my closest friends today. I think that was what took us from that cusp of, yeah, we're good, to like, all right, now we're someone to compete with, to contend with, because you build that bond that really does create this sense of loyalty and friendship. And to do that within a team and to see success like we had, was pretty fun, especially always being, good, but not great.
Right. They became some of your closest friends, where you sometimes hear these stories of athletes on the same team who are equally as talented or want to be the best. So they form rivalries with each other. Talk about how you guys built those bonds and those friendships, but also were able to push each other so all of you could achieve the same goal.
Yeah, I think everyone has their unique story when it comes to their college career in athletics in particular. Like, I was probably, and Kent and Nate and Andy and Ben and Greg will always say to this day, like, I was the worst track fan ever. I knew nothing about other teams. I knew nothing about other athletes. I was there to have fun and going to practice, was hanging out with these guys and doing that. And so the rivalries that were formed were probably, inner demons of people just wanting to break 2 minutes in the 800 or wanting to break 15 minutes in the 5K. And while those were definitely goals, it was kind of just like when you step on that line, our goal was not about racing each other. It was about, winning that race, and whoever was going to win, as long as it, had that D on your singlet when you cross the finish line, that's what the important part was. And so cross country and track and field in particular, more cross country, is a team sport. But if you have a bad race, you can't blame anyone but yourself. And if you have a good race, no one can take the credit but you. And so if you can work together in the practices that lead up to those races, that's what makes, when a teammate comes in first, or someone comes in seventh, and you all did the same thing, but you're able to kind of share that victory together, whether you came in first on the team, fifth on the team. And so those rivalries, sure, there were days, but a lot of those rivalries came more so in practices, where it was like, hey, we're working today, we're putting in the work, we know what our paces are, and nudging people with the elbow as you come around the turns on the track, or at Dickinson Field, and wherever it was that you were doing these, the War College, or going around that cinder track out there, or just going on the weird names for runs, whether it was Kansas or it's been so long since I've run there, I'm forgetting all the names, but that was where the rivalries were formed. Like, let's show up to practice, let's work, let's push each other, and then, okay, we're done with practice, we're friends, let's go to the calf, let's go gold medal at the table there. And that was always kind of, I think, we knew what the goal was, and it was to beat Haverford, to beat the other schools in the conferences. Whatever issues we had amongst the team, was typically, when it came time to race day, those were all, non-existent.
The success that you guys had as a program and that you even had as an individual, the all-conference awards, helping the program win conference championships both in cross country and track, and then you're All-American. Now you are receiving the ultimate award, being inducted into the Dickinson College Hall of Fame. Talk about that honor, and when that was presented to you, what was the feeling? What were the memories that came rushing back to know that now you are forever basically immortalized here at Dickinson?
I have this one particular memory of the spring of 2010. We're at Muhlenberg's track, and the final lap of the 5K, I'd won the 10K on Friday night. Kent Pecora let me win the steeplechase on Saturday, and then Sunday was the 5K. And so doing those 3 races was a lot, but I knew that, I was going to have to spread myself thin and to win the conference championship and ultimately the Triple Crown. And I remember coming around the back stretch, the final 200 meters, in first, knowing that this is it. I'm going to get this victory, and seeing Anthony Abate stand on the corner, who was one of the field event guys, big throwers, one of the football team, Dwight Dunstan, Greg Smart, all of the women's team, the men's team, just lined up along the side of the track for 150 meters. It seemed like, just cheering and clapping. And it was, that moment to me was more exciting than, going on and getting All-Americans at the national race. It was more exciting than any personal thing that I had done, because it really did solidify how this was a team and how important the team component was. Having the guys over on Thursday night to my apartment, just talking about this is our chance to leave a legacy at Dickinson for the track and field team, and especially for the runners who do it, cross country, indoor and outdoor. So that memory really does stick in my head a lot, more so than having a couple people at nationals. There was no team component there, and I think that's what I always loved about the team, and obviously now being able to, honored to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and still those memories stick in my mind of just what I was really excited about when Nick told us was not so much my individual, but that the team itself was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that to me was just means so much more, because it's so much more fun to share it as a group, share it as a team. And whenever you build anything successful, to be able to have people to share that with is always more important and always more satisfying than crossing the finish line first, especially in an individual sport like running. To be able to share those team victories is huge.
Where here at Dickinson did you find a passion for what you eventually went on to major in? What did you major in, and how did maybe your time here as a student help kind of give you a little glimpse maybe of what you wanted to do beyond graduation?
I majored in international business and management. I thought about minoring in Spanish, but after I came back from studying abroad in Barcelona, I just could speak it well enough, and I was like, that's what I wanted out of it. So a lot of my experience at Dickinson was being able to try new things, and it is a liberal arts college, and I didn't really know. And like I said earlier, I was interested in business, and I remember interviewing someone for a company I worked at a couple of years ago, and bring him on and ask him, what are you interested in? He was like, I'm interested in business. And I was just thinking to myself, yeah, it sounds dumb right now, but that's also what I thought of back then. I didn't know what I was interested in. But I think that having the ability to work, to take electives, to take sociology, to take child development, to take criminal justice, to take all of these elective classes and just learn a little bit about, get your foot wet in some of these areas. You learn really cool professors. I remember Professor Polton was my senior year seminar business professor. He had worked in the rice and grain and the shipping of the railway industry for like 30 years. And just being able to, Steve Erfley and going through managerial economics and how challenging that course was. And there was courses within business that you got to learn. And then there was courses totally not related to it that as I pursued other pursuits professionally, it was cool how, oh, I remember this interesting thing about criminal justice class, or this thing that I pulled from this Spanish class, or all these different things, especially as my brief stint as a professional triathlete, being able to travel all over the world and how much Spanish came into help there. So there was a lot of places, a lot of people, a lot of classes that at the time it was probably like, yeah, astronomy was cool, it was interesting, but looking back recently in the past 10 years of my professional career post Dickinson, how some of those elective classes, not just the business classes, really did come back into play. And so I think that, to me, from a liberal arts education, in the middle of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, kind of, you could see how all of those things influenced, where I am today.
And you've had a pretty interesting career post Dickinson. Talk to us a little bit about what you've done since you've graduated, some of the opportunities that you've been presented with.
I graduated, like I said, in spring of 2010. Technically, I went on to break, and which I think it still sets as the 5K record at 14:12. I did after I graduated, but it was like a week, and you're technically still allowed due to NCAA rules. So then I moved out to Los Angeles. I got a job in the NBC Page program. So if you've ever seen 30 Rock and Kenneth the Page, that's the suit I wore for a little over a year. Wow. At NBC out in Los Angeles. So I got to work in music, television, in the publicity department, in their 100-year executive anniversary, to do a photo shoot with them, to do the Tonight Show with Jay Leno as the backstage coordinator. So I did that for about a year, and then I was a production assistant for another year, working for a variety of production companies. And then I went on to work for this startup company called Surfset Fitness, where we pitched on Shark Tank and got $300,000 from Mark Cuban. Traveled around the US and around the world a little bit, going to different fitness conferences where it was basically like a 6-foot-long surfboard on top of these Bosu balls or Bosu discs that would mimic the motion of surfing. So I did that for 2 years after I was in LA for 2 years, and then had this opportunity when I came back to Boston to I was interviewing at a variety of different companies and production companies, and had this, opportunity to train with the U.S. Triathlon team. And so made that team, moved out to Phoenix, trained with them for 3 years, where I lived in Phoenix and then in San Diego when it got too hot in Phoenix. And then we'd go to northern Spain, and then we'd go to Australia, and just kind of wherever the races were on the ITU circuit, I would go and race and train there. And then coming out of that was, okay, after 2016, didn't qualify for the Olympics, was the 9th ranked American, so need to figure out another step there. Had this opportunity to kind of go back to LA, work back in production. I started my company, which is called Tag Along, having come across a lot of different people, professional athletes in triathlon. My brother as a rower, just met a lot of different cyclists, swimmers, rowers, runners, triathletes, track and field athletes who were kind of doing what I was doing and traveling around the world and trying to make ends meet by working odd jobs here and there. And so I figured if I could create a way for athletes to work with recreational athletes or weekend warrior type people who were looking for a way to, pick an athlete's brain, or to get a training plan from them, or to meet up with them in person and go for a training session, and to literally find, hire, and train with professional athletes. So I created an app. Now I think we have about 70 pro athletes, starting to expand beyond the endurance world a little bit. And then, coaching classes at Equinox at the time to pay bills. And then had this opportunity about 2 years ago, where this company at the time was called True Crew by True Rowing, that now is finally a better name, called Hydro.
A little bit easier to remember too.
a little bit easier. And it's essentially we film on the water rowers in a single, so one person, 2 oars, rowing on the water and leading fitness classes. And then we make rowing machines, And so we sell the machines. It has a screen on it, and so then you can tap, where do you want to go? So we filmed in London and Scotland and San Francisco and Oakland and San Diego and Texas and Florida. And so we filmed 6 months in Boston, 6 months down in Miami. We'll see what happens this season, but so I get to do a lot of the logistics, a lot of kind of behind the scenes production work, as well as being one of the rowers on camera, leading the classes there. So it's been very fun. I love the startup world. I think there's been a lot of, like I said, kind of ways in which I've been able to draw upon my Dickinson education, from liberal arts to athlete to just figuring out how teams work and how to get the most out of a team, whether it's athletic based or not. So now I'm currently in Boston, doing the production stuff as well as the filming stuff with Hydro and running my tag along company. So it's definitely been an interesting past 10 years since I graduated. But yeah, definitely a lot of crossover from my time there.
No, it sounds like it's been a jam-packed 10 years too. And I think it's great that you've had these experiences doing so many different things and have gotten to travel the world. And as you said, that you've gotten to apply so many of the lessons and the opportunities that Dickinson offered you as a student on this small campus in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, that apply to the world. Talk about the lessons that you learned here, and maybe from Coach Nichter and from your professors, that you have seen come to fruition now in your professional career, as you've dealt with so many different people and have been to so many different countries and places.
As I briefly talked about, like if you want to do anything well, it's typically easier with a team. If you want to get better, asking for help, whether that's teammates, coworkers, family, whatever it is. And I think Nichter did a really, it was probably a very hard job, especially being cross-country, indoor and outdoor track coach, but making sure that you put the team first. And I think whether that's, again, athletically or professionally, that's why companies grow. That's, I was the 18th person at Hydro, and now we're over 90 people. And I think there's a lot of crossover, and you can't do everything yourself. In Dickinson, I'm sure everyone's familiar with doing group projects, and sometimes people pull more of their weight than others, and that's life, and that's definitely a part of it. But when you do find a good teammate, a good colleague, who understands what you're trying to do individually, but also professionally, and how that fits into their world, relying on those teammates to help you accomplish your goals is huge. And I think that, having a coach, learning from someone who, if you want to do anything and you want to do anything successfully, you got to throw yourself into it. You got to do it well. You can't half-ass things. And whether that's from a training perspective, I was good, not great, was able to compete successfully, but my goal was, to see how good I could become and see if I could make it to the Olympics. And, I wouldn't have been able to do that without my teammates at Dickinson. I wouldn't have been able to do that without my, training while, working. I wouldn't have been able to do that without my triathlon guys that I trained with, and living and training all over the world. And I think a lot of that, just comes from, finding that group of people that work well. I still keep in touch with, like I said, Andy and Kent and Nate and Mike and Ben and a lot of these guys from Dickinson, who it's fun to have a place to relate back to and to talk about, how you've progressed from the past 10 years. So just doing anything well, and dedicating yourself to something and figuring out, learning about it, reading about it, listening to stories and podcasts, and reading about how other people have done it. And if you want to make a true difference, right now with Tag Along and Hydro, I genuinely enjoy learning about other people's fitness journeys and goals and how I can help be a part of that. But the only way I've been able to do that is because I'm a part of good teams that allow me to do that. So it's definitely similar to the Dickinson life.
And last couple questions for you as we wrap up our time here. The first is, what makes you proud to be an alum from Dickinson College?
I'm literally staring at this thing right here that Nichter gave me a long time. Was the journey is the reward here. And that definitely is a part of, Coach Nichter has part of his signature in his email. But I think that brings me back to, anytime I get emails from the college or from the president or see things that Dickinsonians are doing, it gives you the sense of pride of, and most times I have conversations with people, where'd you go to school? Denison, Fairleigh, Davidson, Fairleigh Dickinson. A lot of people don't know about Dickinson, and I don't take offense to that. It's a small school in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But when people do know about it, and there was a hydro member that wrote in on our kind of message system that was like, I was talking about Sufferfest, a particular workout that Nick had coined. And I brought it up in one of my rowing workouts, and, she wrote to me about that. And it's this very strong bond of anyone who's gone to Dickinson. Regardless of your experience there, you have these experiences, and whether you're going to the hub or you're walking across High Street or College Street or going to the athletic center, that's things that only those people are able to relate to. And seeing other Dickinsonians succeed, or just in the news, is really what makes me prideful, makes me proud about it, about being a Dickinsonian. And I think seeing the action that he took, especially when the pandemic with coronavirus came, seeing how open they were with communication is something that was really cool to see. I was very happy to be a part of a community that was trying to be as transparent as possible. So,
what gave you pride also in wearing a Dickinson uniform and getting the chance every time you stepped on the track or the cross country course to represent Dickinson College as a Red Devil?
I think the teammates, the people who wear that uniform the years prior, Andy Elkin, Tom Rhodes, Matt Liebel, Dan Widener, Pete Burney, all these guys that came before me, Tom Morgan, that, you were excited to get to the level that they were, whether it was, as a freshman year, looking up to these guys or beyond. But it was very cool to see the team progress, and still to the day to have, all these group emails or things that come up, to be able to put the big D on your chest when towing the starting line, knowing the history of it, and now looking back, the teams that have come since then, and to know that my name is on the leaderboard, they're on the record board there when you go into the Klein Center, to know that people look at that, and not from a sense of like, oh, I did that, but from a sense of like, hopefully that gives motivation to individuals to take my name off, to be better, to strive for more, to go for those records, because I was nowhere near the type of runner I was when I left Dickinson from when I entered. So it has to do with that community, that environment of people who create that culture of, we're here to have fun, but we're here to be fast, and we're here to better ourselves in whatever that means.
Why do you feel like that's important to you as an individual, but also important to all these guys who you mentioned who came before you, and all of you have worn that same uniform? Why do you feel not even obligated, but a sense of pride when you can give back to these current student athletes and encourage them through an email or them seeing your names on those leaderboards?
I've been given a lot of opportunity in my life, and athletically, professionally. I was fortunate to be raised in a family that was always striving for more, always working hard. If I won a race and got a 95 on a test, my dad would say, "Could you have gone faster? And what were the 5 things you got wrong?" And so, coming from a supportive family, coming from friends that were able to enjoy my athletic success, I think giving back is one of the ways that you can help tell your own story. I went to Dickinson. I went for all 4 years. I got to take advantage of, being a part of an a cappella group, being a part of a business society group, being a part of studying abroad program, being a part of a fraternity until it was kicked off. And, those things here and there, that those experiences are unique to me. And that's definitely a part of my story. And I think being able to help dedicate, really nice locker rooms to the cross country team, beyond just a dirty red carpet that was in the corner of the gym by where the volleyball and basketball teams practice, like that is, would it have been great to have that when I was there? Absolutely. But to be able to know that people are student athletes are able to take advantage of those things, because of the way that myself and friends and teammates, and classmates were able to do and help carve the way, that to me is super important. And I think, it's always easy to when you're, where I am now, to be able to connect the dots looking back, but when you're in your position to figure out where you're going to be in 10 years is nearly impossible. So to know that if people are interested in things that I've talked about or things that I'm doing now, to reach out. And, I was a freshman living in Dreyer, at one point as well. And, we all come from somewhere, and to be able to give back and to leave your mark, your story, your legacy, however you can, I think is one way that is fun, and is also very, like you said, is a way to show your pride coming from Dickinson.
When the runners can get back on the track in the cross country course, what is your prediction for Coach Nichter and the Red Devil program?
Oh man, I went for a run on Saturday. I hadn't gone for a run in a long time, and it made me think about all the long runs that every Sunday that we do with that team. And I hope that they can be competitive in the Centennial Conference. It's incredibly, it's gotten significantly more competitive with Johns Hopkins having a lot of good distance runners. Haverford always a stalwart in the running community, but Nichter has experience, and there's something to be said for a coach who's been doing it for over 35 years to know what works, what doesn't, how to adjust the group of people that you have to get the most out of them. So I would hope top three at least to get back into that top three. But it takes time to build up a successful program. We weren't good freshman year, and it took time to get there, and to enjoy that time along the way is half the reason why you will be successful. If they can get back on the podium at the Centennial Conference in cross, indoor or outdoor, I'll definitely be watching, definitely be cheering on. So.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to share your story. We are honored to hear it, and can't wait to share it with the Dickinson community.
Of course. Thank you so much, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. And love the hat. And we can't wait to see you back on campus when we are open for business again.
Hope so. 10-year reunion. It's got to happen. So.
Yeah, it's definitely got to happen. I agree with that.